You ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, looking for input here. And some of you have talked about, a number of you have talked about challenges that you face at the break with me, and I want you to bring those up so that we can capture those and we can respond to those. We are going to get out of here by 11:30, guarantee you. I may have to speed this up a bit, but the input is critical. So what is this, this stuff is just data. And some of you have, how many of you have been at some of the regional meetings or other meetings that have seen this data before? About a third of you, okay. I hope this is not too much of repetition. Somebody said to me here that they've seen it before, but it's more in context now, and they feel like we're talking about it in real terms and that can be done with. So don't take this data as gospel in terms of this is where you are and you're stuck here. This data is to tell you what you're dealing with so you can build a plan. So what is the profile? What is this profile telling you about your region? Don't be bashful. You weren't bashful during the break.
We're spiraling downward.
All right, we're spiraling downward, okay? We have work to do.
Better get their ass in gear.
All right?
Better get their ass in gear.
Better get our ass in gear, okay?
We have something great that people want, but they can't afford it yet.
We have something great that people want, but they can't afford it. Yet. Okay?
Trying to be hopeful.
Good. Okay. Yes?
We need to create a culture of innovation.
We need to create a culture of innovation.
We're lacking a strategy and a plan.
We're lacking a strategy and plan, which is exactly why SeVEDS is organized. Okay? This is out of balance now. We got 1 over here and 10 over here. So can we, any other comments over on this side of the room? Just taking it in? Okay, okay, yeah.
When you say we're lacking a plan, I mean, like, how many people, what I heard, most of these people here are planners. How can we be lacking a plan? We've got the Dover economic thing, we got the Wilmington thing going on, we got the Tri thing going on, we've got all these things going on, and all these planners. Where's the plan? What is the plan?
And many of the people who should be in this room aren't.
Which I
Many
said
of the people
earlier.
who should be in the, well, one of the key things we want to learn is who should be in the room. Okay, I'm going to ask, okay, go ahead, Paul.
And just to kind of respond to that, that's almost one of the problems is we have all these little individual plans. I put the diagram together that showed the commuting shed, and what I was trying to show with that is most of the jobs aren't here. So we need to start tapping into not only just this region, but making friends with maybe the state next door and maybe the state to the south and trying to tap into their sheds too, because there's already economic development right around us. We just start pulling it kind of into this region.
So who should be, who isn't here that should be here? And you don't have to list names, but if you're talking about segments of the economy, whatever, when you say that, what do you mean?
Existing business owners.
Existing business owners, okay?
Yeah, from Halifax, I don't have any business owners here. It's just one
Okay.
person from.
Then one of the things we need to talk about is how do we get those business owners to the table? Okay? What's going to, we'll need, and what I'd like to offer you, Laura, do you have the ability on the website to send an idea in? Is there, would it be to your email or what, how would we do that?
For people to send ideas.
Can we do it through the SeVEDS website?
Yeah,
okay.
contact us.
Just contact, okay. What I'd ask for those of you who say, this is not the first, there have been a number of comments during the break that we don't have enough business people here, we don't have the right people here. Send Laura through the SeVEDS website your thoughts. We're going to be back here in June for a whole week again. And Laura, obviously, and Jeff and Pat are working on this project ongoing. We'd love to have your ideas of how to get them engaged. Okay? What's going to be the best way to do that? We're pretty flexible on how to do. Yes, sir.
Well, there are business people here, but most of them, and most of
On
the
vacation too.
people are on vacation.
Okay. They're on vacation because of mud season, right? Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes.
So just really quickly to give a little context to Royal's comment, the Bytown effort that started here, and it started
6 years ago.
6, 7 years
April
ago.
2007.
Okay, so that effort, pulling together the towns to come together with a plan that still exists, I think inspired enough of the folks that were working on that actually drew, it's the genesis of driving this SeVEDS project. So there's nothing in the Bytown project that cannot feed into this larger strategy. It's just making sure that they're connected.
Okay, Jeff, can somebody find me a cup of water or something? Sure, hot water would be preferable, but there's nothing in those. Those are all coffee over there. They're, pardon? No? Okay, no. Okay. Let me ask you, okay. What are the most important challenges to your local economic future and for this region? Some of you brought up ideas during the break to me. Yes?
I think we're still very weak in infrastructure.
Weak in infrastructure, what do you mean?
For example, my town still does not have high-speed internet.
Your town is Halifax?
Halifax. My town does not have high-speed internet. And while there are plans and grants and so forth to get it here, I'm concerned about what a backup plan would be if for some reason they're not able to achieve last mile broadband connectivity by the end of this year. Similarly, I think Irene taught us that we maybe need to look at our transportation infrastructure regionally, because it was very hard to get from town to town. And if there were Halifax residents who were working in Brattleboro, that was a real challenge for a while. How do we look at that, not just what should Halifax pave, but what should Halifax pave looking at Marlborough, Guilford, and Whitingham and our neighboring towns?
Okay.
So, I mean, that's a big piece that, you know, that governmental piece, that infrastructure piece that we need to figure out.
Okay. Yes.
That's what I was majorly interested in. The internet is first, but I think that a public transportation system between the towns, someone really has to give a reality plan on that, because people are having to drive even for their work, and if there is no alternative to using your car and your gasoline and stuff like that to get to work.
You talked about at the West End Inn, you can't get a chambermaid from Brattleboro to come up to your area because they don't make enough money.
To afford a car and the stuff like that, yes.
So and in the tourism business, there's a lot of there's also lots of high wage jobs, but there are also lots of lower wage jobs and seasonal jobs, and that's having public transportation.
This goes right down to the coordination between parking in Brattleboro and the fact that it's very difficult not only for the people who are working down there, but for tourists coming through. You arrive on the train in Brattleboro and there is no simple designations as to where to find the transportation center if there is a bus or public service. There's no information for anybody as how to get from the train station elsewhere. They changed the area that used to be used for parking, that you can no longer park overnight to take the train from Brattleboro to New York, which a lot of people like to do for a weekend. So the fact that they're improving the railroad is a very good thing, but they're not improving that once the person gets off the train or on the train, how they can manage it if they're coming from a smaller town area.
Yeah, I also noticed that when I first came into Brattleboro a couple of years ago, and some of the other towns in this area, that, like, I even came in today, and first thing I did was call Laura because I saw all these 2-hour parking signs.
Exactly.
And as a person coming in, I'm saying, okay, it's small town, it's local police, revenue time. I need to make sure that
would take care of it.
right. Laura says, no, they'll never do it. Yeah, but what I would say to you, Dubuque, Iowa was a classic example. Dubuque, Iowa had this problem, and people didn't know where to park that was appropriate, didn't fully understand it. So the Chamber of Commerce, in cooperation with the local police department, created this beautiful card that the police put on your windshield and said, "We're really glad that you have come to our town. We just want you to know that you inadvertently parked in a place that you could be ticketed for. But we're going to give you, you know, you're a guest in our town, we want to treat you as a guest, but next time when you come, these are the areas where you can go. I thought, good gracious, you know, that a simple act like that just says, we're interested in having you here. We're not interested in bilking you, okay? And so that, it was a really interesting thought. So, okay, what other challenges? Yes, ma'am.
I had two thoughts that I shared with you, but great. One is,
And just speak up so the others can hear you.
I've been the town clerk for a long time, so I was the town clerk during the time that we had a real estate boom, and a lot of people would come to the counter who were in the demographic group that you were talking about that's critical to the workforce.
25 to
Say,
44.
yep, say that, you know, a couple would come in their early 30s with 3 kids in tow, you know, have to come down off the mountain and say, gee, we'd really like to live here, you know, do you have any advice?
Right.
Which was a bad thing to ask me, of course. Sometimes I engaged with these folks and said to them things like, you know, do you have a 6-figure income in your family right now where you live? Well, yes, we do. How do you think you can replicate that here and have your family survive on the same level of income that you already are making? Some of them were people like police officers who could retire at 35 and have a partial pension, but then look for some work and a wife who was doing something that got her about $50,000 a year. So I often said to them, just make these decisions before you land. You know, can you make this economic shift?
Right.
Because you will not be able to easily replicate a 6-figure income for your family in this valley unless you bring it with you. And at that point, of course, we didn't have as much broadband availability as we do now. We're still lacking, but it was very difficult. So I think my personal little thing has always been that we are missing a remarkable opportunity with the second homeowner population who has already made a decision that they love this area enough to invest in it, and even many of them would like to transition here. But we need to promote the idea that if you can bring your business or part of your business or some of your income with you, you may be able to make that transition. And that would, again, add to your pool,
Right.
of course. They might need to hire somebody part-time to assist them with their business. And you know, I've said this before, and a lot of people have agreed with this idea. I just don't know that we've figured out how to promote it or to make it happen more often. It does happen occasionally. Our graying population tends to be augmented by folks of some kind of means who bring that means with them in order to retire to this lovely place in their past working age life, that they would like to be able to live here and enjoy what we have, but they bring the resource with them in order to do that, to be able to have property, pay taxes, spend in the community. But they, as wonderful resources that is, they're not part of creating the ongoing economic base to keep economics going or growing in the community that people can find jobs in.
Right.
They may be spending, but they're not creating.
Okay.
So we have those two things that are resources that maybe aren't working the best for us.
So there are some examples around the country where this has been dealt with. Actually, in Canada, we've done the same thing. My understanding, somebody said to me that roughly 70% of the people that live in this general area are second homeowners. The homes, properties are owned by them. They don't live here.
They're owners.
They're owners, but don't live here. Okay. How has anyone sought out and mapped where those people work and what professions they have? Yes. Laura, you were going to say yes?
I think there is some information about that, probably from the mountains,
Right.
probably from the chamber, looking at their kind of marketing. They have a sense of where these folks
Okay.
are coming from, the realtors. I have a different challenge.
Okay, hold on just a moment. Just to give an example. What we've done in several areas of the country, Kalispell, Montana is one of them, where in mapping that information, we identified, first of all, what would allow them to extend their stays. Okay, so that instead of just coming for a short weekend, they could spend a week. If the broadband was there, if other things were there, to allow them to network back to their companies. The second thing we did was, by doing that, and we did this on the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State, is to identify who had the potential to actually work and telework. We have companies that were created, big database companies that were created in homes in the Olympic Peninsula and stuff. Being able, but it took us 3 or 4 years to map out where those opportunities were, and there was a huge, for like 9 years, a huge drive up in terms of the amount of homes that were being built because of this attraction of people to live there full time and work from there. It also drove huge investments on the Olympic Peninsula, which has very high mountains. We literally got telecommunication companies to drive 5 or 2 miles up in the mountains because of the demand that was being created around understanding what technology, what opportunities there were for these kinds of companies. And it was interesting, we had Microsoft right across the way, not in Redmond, Washington, which is their headquarters, and a lot of Microsoft engineer families were vacationing over on the Olympic Peninsula. Okay, but we had to identify where those people were coming from to find out where there were common, because typically when people, I mean, I'm assuming that people come to like Mount Snow, they have friends that come there also. And oftentimes there may be fellow workers that are coming. So if you can find places where there are synergies, where people would have a common interest to be in that place for a longer period of time, you can actually create, especially if you can create the ability for them to be creative and innovative while they're there, and give them the opportunity for their children to be there as well, and maybe even have an even better school opportunity, school choice opportunity, depending on what school they're in. Those are all, that's linking your assets together to figure out how to get those people to want to be there and stay there. So that's just a few ideas I will throw out to you. Don't know whether they would work here. Yes, you have another challenge.
Being from this side of the region, I would say to you, Frank, when we look at the population loss in the region.
When you say this side of the region?
This side, on the western side of the region.
Okay,
so in
western
small
side of the
towns
region.
Up here.
Okay.
I live over here.
Okay.
When we look at the population challenges of southeastern Vermont, and we look at stagnant population, well, there are distinctly areas that are losing population.
Right.
And in this area, in the Deerfield Valley, and on the western side, we are losing population much more so than the eastern side. And I would say that is the largest challenge that is facing this side of the region, because it's a capacity issue. I mean, we're going to hit a tipping point where I'm absolutely thrilled to see this many people here today. I mean, we're losing people. You see it in the schools, you see it in businesses, you see it in empty buildings. You see it everywhere.
So one of the things I'm going to, Pat and Laura, I would recommend is that we take the demographics we have and information and see if we can segment it by portions of the region so we can get a better picture at the micro level. And we'll talk to Mark Madsen about that.
Frank?
Yes.
I'm going to add to that.
Yes.
Because the flooding that happened, Irene, that happened, impacted that. I believe we will see that in the data even more on the eastern side, kind of exacerbating that in terms of capacity and population.
Okay.
So that was existing, and I think doubly hurt.
Okay. Good input. Okay. This gentleman back here, I want to make sure we get your point on that you mentioned to me during the break about silo vision.
One of the things with our business,
speak up something.
With our business, we're at the winery, and at least 90% of our business comes from outside of Vermont. We cannot get Vermont to have any part of working with us very much. And of that 10% that's left that comes here, more than half of that is the second homeowner business. So really they're not Vermont business either.
Okay.
And we spend all of our resources because we can't get them here. We take all that money out of the pool, and we have to go to Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, and market. And when we go there to do shows and market and all that, we don't just market us, we market the area, because if we're the only entity, why is somebody from New York going to come
Right.
here? So we
Right.
promote the other things
Right.
to do in the area and stuff like that. And we try and work with the chamber and partnering with events because this is a costly venture.
Right.
And we've all tried to do the pay to play and bring other units,
Right.
whether they're inns, businesses, and things like that, into market. And most of the time we hear, well, what's in it for us? Or that's not going to bring us anything.
Right.
In the grand scheme, it does, because then that money comes up and starts filling up that pool again.
So what you're saying is one of the major challenges is this very micro level thinking and siloed thinking within your own organization and not understanding interrelationships and the benefits of that. And this came up in other meetings we had yesterday with manufacturers, people who do business, make things here, and that nobody from Vermont even buys it. Okay, and they are buying similar products out of Canada for more money. And they can't even get through the purchasing cycles with Vermont enterprises. So there's something going on here in the water. I'm not sure what it is, but this is not the first time I've heard this. So this sounds like something we need to be focused on. Why?
Well, just, I mean, hearing people talk, I can understand like the context of being in Wilmington, and the second homeowner thing is like a huge aspect of this, but this is all bringing money into the pool as it were, but I don't hear anyone saying anything about, say for example, as a young person whose salary isn't even on the lowest end of the spectrum that's up there, how about the keeping the money in the pool for us, or creating the things that, you know, forget how we're going to entertain the second homeowners. I also send money out of the pool because when I'm working here and working for these second homeowners, I also want something to do. I want some reason to be here, and you know, where is that for the young people that you're trying to keep here? You know, if we're only catering to the people who have second homes here, then the people who are already, like, what about all these people who are already here and don't have the jobs? That, you know, like, how do we create that for them instead of just saying, well, we've got to bring all these second homeowners in, and how do we keep these second homeowners here for
yes.
I'll try to make it quick. I'm with you on that, and I'm really concerned. For our school, when I started 4 years ago, our free and reduced lunch population was 24%, and now it's reaching 65%.
You've gone in how many years from 24?
In 4 years.
From 24 to 65%.
Approaching 65%. And the impact of this on learning and for our children, and to be hungry, and for the stress of young people and families who aren't making money, has a really huge impact on my school.
Can we get Laura with the school board, the school districts, and find out what this trend has been in the most recent years?
Yes, I think Pat is actually working to set up a regional education meeting with discussion with you guys.
I'd really like to know what the school lunch.
The trend is exactly that.
Okay, and I want to see.
But isn't the trend also coupled with a decline in student population, so that as the student population declines, that population is increasing over the
those who can't, those who don't have choice.
An increase in transient population in relationship to low-income housing in the area.
Okay, let me move on. This has been really, really good input. Okay, let me just ask one more question. What is the impact of the regional natural disasters told us about the broader need for broader regional collaboration to address issues larger than one town's resources? Okay, what have we learned from this whole issue of the Hurricane Irene and other issues that have hit here? Is there a need for greater resources than one town can deliver? Okay, is there a need? Do you think there's a need for a countywide or region-wide redevelopment capability to support to work with the towns? Or and I look at it, you know, you go to most states and you don't have all these individual towns with all these individual infrastructures which are limited. You have a county or even a larger multi-county region that has a redevelopment capability that each town can rely on and work with. That's the norm around the country in terms of how you get these major infrastructure issues dealt with. Yes?
I think you've touched on a word that a lot of people object to, and that's redevelopment. Development. Oh my God, take that farm and make a lot of houses.
Right.
I don't think lack of development means lack of economic growth.
Right.
It's just explaining that you can grow
Right.
without
But when I'm talking about a
but you're talking
capability, I'm talking about having the ability as a public system to be able to integrate road structures, the needs of each town together in a common road planning system. The ability to, if you've got a brown field in a particular town, does every town have to have a brownfield expert? Okay, how do you mitigate all this stuff? So, Wendy, would you go?
Yeah, I'm sitting here sort of sifting through all this information, and I have felt very strongly that we need to have a much broader strategy, and a broader strategy meaning a regional strategy, and one that might be perhaps all of southern Vermont, and because we have so many similarities on both. I am originally from Bennington County, and now just recently moved here.
You got a visa.
I did. I did. Thank you, Laura. You helped me with that.
And Bill let you go.
But there are so many similarities and commonalities, and we should build on all those strengths and those assets. Okay. So I hear what you're saying, and I just would like to see that happen.
Okay. Let me move on then. Okay. This next subject I want to look at is you've already talked about a lot of challenges. I want to bring up the opportunities and the challenges that were mentioned through 2010 and up to recently. On the opportunity side, the #1 mentioned asset was the Vermont brand. And we're finding that both manufacturers as well as hospitality people as well as farmers consider that brand to be very important. The location is important in terms of what it's near. I love this one, imminent technology infrastructure, which has to do with broadband. You have a relatively strong you have a very interesting high-tech manufacturing base, very technical skilled one here in this region. The educational institutions. Do you all know how many colleges of learning, higher education institutions of learning you have in this region? How many think it's 3? 5? You have 6 institutions of higher learning. Most people don't even realize that, and there's a consortium that's been pulled together around this to really get people to understand that. Strong culture and arts, asset of tourists and second homeowners, bringing dollars into a region that's also regarded as a challenge on the other side, that people don't live here. And the comment that was made in the first effort we spent around 2010 here is the second homeowners bought the postcard. And they go home, and whenever they come back, they want to see the postcard. And so nothing ever can change because the postcard is what I bought. I thought that was a really interesting way to describe it. On the challenge side, #1 was the lack of cell service and broadband. And you all have brought that up previously in this meeting. Weak local market and economy, declining workforce population, taxes, the declining earned income, lack of a qualified, not strong workforce recruitment, declining student enrollment, a redevelopment capability, which is along the lines I talked about, a stagnant real estate market, lack of innovation, true entrepreneurship. Now you all, lack of investment capital, disconnect between education and job. One of the ones that is not in here that we heard a lot about yesterday was issues of trailing spouse problems, job problems. One spouse gets a really good offer, and then the other spouse can't find a job of equivalent, and that person, that family does not move. Okay, okay, come on, there you go. This is a trailing boyfriend.
Question, Ken?
Yes.
I just think a real important challenge that should be added would be, especially for the hospitality industry, is the seasonality. For instance, we could provide more year-round jobs if we had more business in the summer.
Okay.
So I know it's not the same for all areas, like Brattleboro may be more consistent,
That's
but
important.
in this particular town or Dover, that's a big challenge.
So what we need to do is to move to a multi-season tourism environment, okay, to deal with that. Okay, bring it. You said this to me at the break, and please put it on the table.
When we first got here, as many of you know, you've heard this over and over again, Ned and I have been here now, we celebrate our 20th winter, okay? We're one of the longest term innkeepers in the area right now. And when we first got here, the summer bus business had 600 buses coming to this area. We're lucky if we have 6 today. Maybe more than 6, but we don't have 100 even. Okay, and a lot of the things that people came for are gone. So some of the entertainment's gone, the boat ride's gone, Adams Farm is gone. You know, you just look at all these things, the reason people come. And the only reason that I can think of they get people to come now is central location, so they can do a hub and spoke tour. And you can say you're central, and that's, you know, one of the things we can continue to sell. We also had a very strong, and this is another thing, a very strong senior business, especially up in the Dover area. As you know, we have about 10 bazillion condos or homes. There were at least 600 seniors here every summer, year after year after year. There were things for them to do. They enjoyed the area, they went to the restaurants and so on. But this town, this community, not this town, this community felt they were pains in the asses. Let's be frank. A lot of people wanted to get rid of them. They said, no. they wanted to get rid of them. They said, oh, they go into the restaurant, they order one meal, they take it home, then they eat off it 5 days. I mean, can't tell you how many times I heard stuff like that. Honestly. And so they're gone. They're gone. There were maybe 20, of those 600 used to come, last summer there were 26 people. 26. That's a huge economic impact over the 20 years.
Well, of the 300 million people living in this country, there are 75 million of us baby boomers who are probably going to live 30 years past 65 on average. And if we don't want that tourist group, something's...
And I'm not saying we have to go out and market just to seniors and so on, but these are examples. I'm not saying let's turn, you know, into God's waiting room like Florida, but, you know, we killed our summer business on purpose because we didn't welcome people. And we did a lot of, there are events that are gone that we couldn't keep up, stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of stuff. But we had a more thriving summer business than we do now.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
So I made a comment, I didn't know whether or not this is where you wanted me to bring in state government.
Certainly, go ahead.
But I think one of our biggest challenges is our own state government. Now, I don't keep up on what's happening in the legislature because in my business I'm very busy from January through April 15th.
What business are you doing?
I have an accounting practice.
Okay.
So one of the things that was being proposed, I don't know if it passed or if it's still in the works, was a living wage. Apparently our legislators thought that one of the ways to solve the problems in the state was what they call a living wage is essentially raising the minimum wage to something, I think they were talking about $12.50. Because I guess there's this perception at the legislative level that all of us small businesses have deep pockets, that we can afford to pay higher wages, that we can afford to pay higher property taxes. And what's happening is, I think a lot of people are going to start voting with their feet. And so this tax base, and they have, the numbers show it. And so what's happening is there's a smaller and smaller tax base, there's a number of people who can pay this. The reality is, if you there's so many dollars that most businesses can spend on compensation. So if you raise the minimum wage, well, then you're going to employ less people.
Right.
You know, I don't want to dwell on this, but state government is a problem because they don't have a sense of reality.
Okay. Okay, well, let me suggest, in every state we're in, the state government business climate or anti-business climate turns out to be a major issue. However, what we typically find is that is one of the top 4 issues. But the other 3 are within local control. Many of the issues that have been talked about besides that one are within local control. Already today, just ones you all brought up, ones in here, they're within local control. So I'm a big believer that you got to pay attention to what the state's doing, but I'm also a big believer that we can make changes in our local community regardless of what the state chooses to do. And if we make changes at the local level and are positive and they make a difference, we can have an even more important influence at the state level by doing that. We're already seeing that with SeVEDS. In SeVEDS is being mentioned. I remember Laura gave me a call one day at my office. I happened to be in, and she called me, and she had just come out of the state legislature, and she was there for, I think it was an education meeting or something. And she said, "This is the proudest day of my life. Here's a speaker," I think it was a speaker house, was standing with a SeVEDS plan telling all these legislators, this is the way an economy ought to be run. This is the way people ought to be looking at their economy. Metrics, regional, business plan, you know. So already what you're doing here is beginning to have an impact, okay? Although Windham County is home for Pat, it's not a normal thing necessarily for somebody that's been head of, you know, State Office of Economic Development, Department of Labor and everything, to come down to a local economic development agency, okay? There's something going on here, okay, that is really positive, and it's attracting people, you know, to want to be part of it. So I think this point needs to be paid attention to, but not to the but not at the priority level that ignores the things that are within our control.
It's more, how do we affect, how do we make them more aware of what our needs are, to pay attention to us, not ignore us when they're making.
I think the way you do that is you prove you know what you're doing. And just like I talked about educating each other about how an economy actually works and what's really going on, you then take the successes you have and start educating the state legislators about how it actually works and how things actually look, because they don't. They're not being given, I will tell you right now, the amount of information they're hit with every day is so overwhelming that they're not getting a clear picture. They're getting a smattering of pieces of the puzzle. And if you can put the puzzle together for them, they would have a much better understanding, and they'll be listening to you and not shifting.
That's so true.
Okay, so that's where I think where the opportunities are. Okay, again, what I would suggest, if you have other challenges that have not been mentioned yet today, you think about when you go home, go to the SeVEDS website, which is SeVEDS.com, is it, or org? .com, SeVEDS.com, and you know, put your input in there, and we'll capture it.
We're also on Facebook, Frank.
That's true. You are on Facebook. I'm going to pass over this. Okay. Then what was looked at were economic assets in the region. Precision technology-driven manufacturing. We met with several of those companies yesterday. Logistics, which actually surprised me here when I moved here, that there were a number of logistics operations in this area. And logistics is transportation, distribution, and logistics. You know, large warehousing where they package up things, trucking concerns, rail traffic. A lot of companies here have global presence. I mean, think about SIT, which is in 70+ countries. Okay, you have That's an asset here. You have a lot of people with global experience, yet when you look at the population here, you do not have a very high percentage of non-native born people in this population here. And I've said this, and some of you have been in some of the other sessions I've talked about this. 15 or 16% of the U.S. workforce today is made up of non-native born people. And this is at the highest and lowest level. 90% of most job growth in the last 10 or 15 years has been supplied by immigration at the highest and lowest level. You go in any major research university and you look at the percentage of researchers sitting at the research tables. Better than 60% are green card holders. Because we're spending all the time graduating people with communication degrees, sports, you know, journalism or whatever, you know. We're not graduating people into sciences. We're not graduating people with math degrees and that kind of stuff. As Bill Clinton said at the National Democratic Convention, it's arithmetic, you know, and that's what this, okay, so if you have a declining population and you only have 1 to 3% of your population non-native born people, and they're supplying 90% of the job growth in the country, you think there might be a problem? Okay, so because us native born people are not birthing enough people, okay, to keep up with the population demands, the job demands that are being created. So you have a natural resource here called all these companies that are dealing internationally. They understand the countries throughout the globe. You have SIT, which is an enterprise that has been working since the beginning of the Peace Corps and before, working in 70, 100 countries. They understand these cultures. What other community around this country that needs to grow a sense of global understanding and a sense of embrace of multiculturalism? Who else has that kind of resource in their backyard? And I'm not sure SIT understands that resource as that kind of asset for you, and I'm sure you all have never thought of it that way. But that's an area where you have an opportunity to shore up. Natural environment for skiing and outdoor recreation, concentration of health and mental health care facilities, and then capacity gaps, incubators, redevelopment system, that we talked about, a workforce development system, broadband, telecom, rail, and post-VY. And I often talk about post-VY. I'm not going to get into the issue of whether VY is here or not, and whether it's good or bad. The issue is the people that make money, the jobs at VY are extreme. They are the highest wage jobs in the region. When VY goes and that income leaves, you all have a problem to deal with. And you better start dealing with what's going to be the replacement industry at those wage jobs, so so if VY does close and is gone and those jobs are gone, you've already taken care of the replacement jobs. Okay? So those are issues. In terms of the economic sectors that SeVEDS is beginning to look at, it's these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever that 6th one is. That's red. That's healthcare. Looks like it's dying. Okay, you have technology-driven precision manufacturing. You've got these niches in optics, medical devices, some aerospace, business and technology services, a lot of different IT services, high-quality post-secondary education. Those 6 different institutions. That is an export economy. That's bringing, exporting that service and bringing people in here to learn, not just teaching local. Logistics and distribution, assembly, distribution, a Northern New England hub, passenger rail gateway, hospitality, retail, tourism, winter sports, fall foliage, arts and culture, vibrant downtown retail, healthcare is mental health care, and regional health services. So you have, in these 6 areas, there are areas of opportunity based around assets you already have. And a number of those happen. And what we'll be doing at SeVEDS is looking at where do these connect up with the areas of growth in the country. There are areas where there is very high growth. And by the way, by 2018, 63% of all jobs in this country will require greater than a high school education with credentialing. but not necessarily a college education. And as I often say to groups that I talk with like this, most of the people in my network that have extra condos are my barber, my carpenter, and my plumber. Okay? And none of them have college educations, but all of them have greater than a high school education. All of them have certifications. Okay, so the problem we have in this country is we as a country have looked down our noses at technical jobs, at jobs that we work with our hands. And the problem is almost all jobs in manufacturing, all jobs in most industry now require more education and require more technical skills, and those jobs are going vacant. That's why we have all these companies looking for H-1B visas to bring people in from all over the world who have those skills. In 1 year, China graduates more engineers than we graduate in 10 years. We are in big trouble if we don't start, and we also do this great job, thank you Congress, educate, all these people come to this country for higher education, get all these degrees, and then we chase them away. Instead of having them grow businesses here. Go figure. Makes a whole lot of sense. A country that has grown through immigration, and we have this mindset that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever anymore. So, the next thing I'd like to do is introduce to you some issues that I've already talked about, some of them, that will help impact your thinking around this strategy and will be part of the process we use. First of all, we just talked about demographics and the role immigration is filled. You need to take that into consideration when you look at what your community should look like in the next 5 years. What should the population be made up of? Should you be attracting immigrant populations into your community to take advantage of the assets you have here and have them as a future workforce? The quality of place, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Workers now, the primary job growth areas in what are called knowledge workers. And it doesn't matter whether it's agriculture or whether it's a UPS truck driver versus a scientist, you know, at Brigham Women's or at Brattleboro Retreat. You have all these people are knowledge workers, and they will choose first where they want to live. Colin, you and your fiance have done that, and then you want to work where you live. Okay, the community that figures out how to be the place young people want to be to grow launch their families and have work are going to be the and have the work for them are going to be the communities that win. Okay, it's no longer that people follow jobs. People are going to communities where they want to be, and you have to make your okay. Number 4 is we are truly in a resurgence in manufacturing, regardless of what some elements of the press say. There is a resurgence of manufacturing in this country. We expect to attract 5 million new jobs in this country in the manufacturing area by 2020. You can choose to be part of that opportunity or not. And this is not huge, big manufacturing plants. I don't know if you've all seen these anybody seen 3D printers? Okay, where you can construct all kinds of, for like $3,000, you can do what a $50,000 machine could do 5 years ago. Okay, so you can be much, there are prototyping companies now that are setting up shop in little communities, and entrepreneurs are coming in to be attracted. They'd help prototype for $10,000, for $20,000 instead of spending $200,000 to prototype a product. You have the opportunity now in a small town to be an innovative manufacturing center because of the way technology has changed. U.S. manufacturing growth is also affected by low-cost energy. The transformation of the energy world in America is truly unbelievable. Gas is at the cheapest it can possibly be. Our greatest risk right now is that the owners of those resources are exporting that stuff around the world. and charging us internally for the market price. So we've got this natural resource here, we've got to learn to leverage it. Food security, for those of you who are interested in the whole world of local foods, this is not just about foodies. This is also about food security. Families want to know where their food is coming from in the world, in the age of terrorism. And so local food choices, local food sources, healthy foods are part of a healthy economy and a healthy community. And finally, healthcare. As you know, we have the Affordable Care Act, but also with the technology that is evolving in healthcare now, there is going to be a transformation in the healthcare field and opportunities the likes of which we have not seen in 20 years. You're seeing X-ray and technology that is now, and even sonogram technology that is literally in your hand today. That is being, and what's happening is development, worldwide companies have figured out there's a third world out there who can't afford to pay what US citizens pay. And they have figured out that they've got to create products that can be sold in the markets where people make $1,000 a year, okay, or $100 a month, and do it profitably. And as they develop that technology in India and Taiwan and other places, they're then returning those technologies to here, to this country. So there's all kinds of technology breakthroughs taking place, and we have to be aware of that. So where we're at in this is that we have issues of challenge and issues of opportunity that we haven't taken advantage of. We have trends that we need to pay attention to, okay, that are part of our planning process. And then we have to figure out which of those trends link up with the assets we have that are unique and can overcome the challenges that keep us from getting ahead and enable us to take advantage of the opportunities we've been ignoring for a while. That's what this whole section is about. Now I want to move to quality of place before we go to questions, because I want to finish on some discussion. We've talked a little bit about the whole issue of quality of place. And when we look at this, if you look at this list in blue, when we look at an economy, when we look at community assets, we look at things like, in quality of place, you look at, when you're building a strategy, you look at human capital, social capital, physical capital, financial capital, environmental capital, cultural capital, and healthy community capital. And most traditional economic development looks at physical and financial capital, but it doesn't look at those others. In fact, human capital, which is workforce development, is often you have workforce development over here and you have economic development over here. In fact, within the state of Vermont, there's not really any connection between the two, is there?
Not there.
No. So, now that's never made any sense to vital economy, because most of us are former CEOs. So we understood that workforce was critical to us to grow our companies, which was part of the economy. So our just simple common sense said that they ought to be linked, and that's what we've been spending a lot. We've just merged 2 workforce boards in Maine into economic development agencies at a regional level, and they're all part of the same organization now. We're doing the same thing, and we did one in Southern Illinois. We're getting ready to do the same thing in Central Illinois right now.
Well, I should rephrase. I mean, there has been a fairly decent linkage. There are some good workforce programs in the economic development department, but it hasn't. We still lack a good workforce development system in the state in any kind of comprehensive way, whereas we have an okay economic development system.
So this SED strategy is going to look at all these aspects as key asset areas and figure out how they link them into a comprehensive, integrated ecosystem for development. Okay? So this is, and one of the things that we just finished talking about knowledge workers and how knowledge workers are in greater demand. And an example I will give you is CVS pharmacies. You ever hear of them? They will actually employ a pharmacist who wants to live in Florida in the winter and live in Vermont in the summer. Okay? And they will move them once a year. Okay? And they'll pay them the same salary. But the reason is they need those knowledge workers. They need them to be where they, and they want to get them where they want to be. So in the traditional economy, workers move to be near jobs. Today's companies traditionally move to where the knowledge workers are. So the communities that win will be the communities that are attractive to knowledge workers. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. And knowledge workers are largely in that 25 to 44-year-old group, unless you're like me. Okay, you'll be 67 in August. Okay. The other thing that we talked about early on was the movement of demographic to people are moving either to active urban lifestyles or active rural lifestyles. So they're not, so you all supply a rural lifestyle that's near urban centers. So you need to think about how you want to take advantage of that. I'm going to pass through this one. Well, actually, I will go back to this one. This study was done for Vermont. It's called the Growing Vermont's Next Generation Workforce. Was this done by Workforce Development? Or?
It was a combination of labor and business, frankly. It was workforce and education and business types.
And what it shows is that there is a disconnect between the perception of Vermont quality place values and people's actions. And so let me go over here. What this is showing is the yellow is percent that value this this asset is either very important or important in the community. So like a community that is vital, has vitality, that has a reasonable cost of lifestyle, there's ongoing learning, high earning capacity, has after-hours attractions, has extensive social capital, and has around town activities. Okay, and then there are the percent that either agree or strongly agree that Vermont offers this. Note that when you look up here and you look at cost of lifestyle, is very important, but there's almost a 30-point disconnect between what they think Vermont offers. Earning capacity is 88% is important, and only 24% think that Vermont offers it. Okay, social capital. Everybody talks about the close community, but you got a 20-point differential between 85 and 65% on social capital. And I've actually heard that here today. You all have talked about all the separation, yet I, as a person who reads Vermont Life, walk away with the idea, you know, my wife has all these images of Vermont Life, okay, from Vermont Life magazine.
That's why you're coming here for your anniversary.
That's why we're coming here for our 45th wedding anniversary. But, and that's a great, we love the magazine. But by the way, my wife has been reading Vermont Magazine, Down East Magazine, and Yankee for 40 years. Just in case you don't think we have an interest in New England. She went to Smith College. She addicted me to New England. And we spent our vacations in Cape Cod. And we're too old to ski.
Oh, that's not saying, right?
No, never too old to ski.
At the 80 and older program.
Oh, 80 and oh, I could sign up for that one. So anyhow, what this basically says is there is a perception by Vermonters that things are important, and there is a perception also by those Vermonters that Vermont is lacking in offering those points that are important. So I'm going to, again, this is available on the website. So when you're looking at quality of place, and by the way, if you're interested, for those of you who are planners, or those of you who are town managers, there are 10 principles for livable communities. And they were created by the American Institute of Architects. They're 10 standards. We have the PowerPoint for it. If anybody's interested in seeing it, we'll be glad to ship it out to you. But when you're looking at elements of quality of place that livable communities is part of, you're looking at balance, where knowledge workers are highly mobile and essentially have a balanced economic opportunity with their lifestyle. Labor market knowledge workers are, they can anticipate moving among various employers. This is a problem here, is that this is brought up by a number of companies. There is not what they call a thick labor market here, in that you can't move between jobs. There are not enough of them offered. Amenities is a very variety and accessibility of natural, recreational, and lifestyle amenities. Okay, you all have a number of those. You're lacking in some. A blend of work and leisure. This is actually an area that could do that very well. A sense of place. Knowledge workers increasingly prefer urban to suburban neighborhoods and seem particularly drawn to areas that feature interesting older structures, a range of public places, a blend of personal and commercial space, and the bustle and buzz of varied activity, including work, shopping, and entertainment. Okay, so those are key aspects. Okay, active lifestyle, alternative arts and culture, define traditional assumptions about what makes a region attractive. Knowledge workers are less concerned with big-ticket amenities such as highbrow arts and culture or professional sports. Instead, they prefer a number of smaller, accessible, street-level opportunities. I think one of the best examples of that anywhere in New England is Portland, Maine. How many of you have been in downtown Portland, Maine? I mean, there isn't one big box experience in downtown Portland. Not one huge restaurant, except for Domino's, whatever the one is on the water. But I don't like to go there, because there's all kinds of boutique choices. It's one of the most interesting downtowns on a scale that's very human in its dimension, and used it sort of put all those ingredients together. And air and water quality really matter. Creativity and innovation. Diversity is not simply an individual preference related to personal lifestyle, but a basic precondition for the creativity and innovation needed to build and sustain a successful high-tech region. We had a very interesting comment yesterday from a manufacturer that we interviewed who has very high precision workers. And he said one of the most valuable assets here are the people in arts and culture who have a high work ethic and have a really very creative capability. They make really good workers in a precision manufacturing environment, which I had not really thought about. And so I think this gentleman already knows who the company was who talked about it. It is very, very focused on the value of those kind of people here. And the educational opportunities. The 21st century economy is based on knowledge. Without local high-quality educational opportunities, innovative and creative talent leaves a region. Employers face higher training costs, and employment opportunities dwindle. So all of these points are very critical when we look at quality place. It's not just having great environment, not just protecting the water. It's about all of these points and putting together into a concentrated plan. So we have about 12 minutes left, and I'd like to ask you to tell me what are the quality of place assets that you need to retain here, or which ones need to be attractive that would keep people here, or are there quality of life assets or quality of place assets that are not in place here that you think should be? And are there quality of place assets that are here that aren't being taken advantage of, that ought to be built up and retained and strengthened? Yes, ma'am.
I think what attracts people to a community is when they feel that they can be influential in what's happening in the community. So I think, having a more, all those points that you said of things that we could add to or, maximize in our community, but making it more attractive that young people can come here and make a change.
Right.
Because new business, if you think of rural businesses that have succeeded, Tom's of Maine, Ben & Jerry's, Burt's Bees that came out of nowhere, a farm in a garage, in someone's back garage, and they became huge companies that are influential in a modern economy. Young people want to do things like that, but they need to feel like they're connected, like you were saying. I want to feel connected to this community. I want to come in and be the trendsetters.
Yep. Okay.
And that's what Colorado does in places like that.
Yes.
I think if you want to attract 25 to 44-year-old families, you have to have an undeniably good educational system.
Absolutely. Okay. So we got to make sure we got a strong educational system for them, for those families. Yes. Anybody over here?
So I think perhaps there's some innovative capital source for entrepreneurs that we could
Okay.
jointly come up with. I
Okay.
don't, to help people who would love to start, you know, something, Frisbees. Yeah, to do some sort of assistance with that, that
Okay.
would get repaid. I don't mean it great.
And the sense is there isn't that capital here right now, right?
No,
Okay.
no, it's-
One of the things we find in rural America, we actually do capital surveys in communities for some of our clients. And what we find is there's far more capital in those regions than that capital is being invested outside the region.
Right.
And the main reason it's being invested outside the region is there's no system in place, management system to manage that capital in that region, and no system to organize deal flow for critical mass. So the capital is actually in the region,
Right.
but it's being invested elsewhere in places where people have put a system in place. So what you're lacking often is the system, not the capital to retain the, to do that. Who else? What other? Yes?
I just feel too, it's such a organic era right now. The organic industry could grow a lot here around the different communities and counties.
So, and when you're talking about organic, are you just talking about?
Farming,
Okay.
of course, is a big one. I mean, there's so many more people into it today than there was ever. I mean, more
Right.
people are buying organic.
Mhm.
They're not afraid to spend a few more monies. I mean, I
Right.
think we've got people that could do it and just, you know, promote it that way. I mean, it's table to, garden to table today in a lot of the restaurants here in the village.
Right.
In the valley.
Yeah, so one of the things I like to do is we were at, what was that brewery we were at, that they had all the organic, local foods, Monday? Weston, right, Weston. Yes,
I think we need to market ourselves too, that
Okay.
for young
Absolutely.
families to come here and you
Mhm.
can ski and you can do this and we'll offer
Right.
broadband, we'll offer the capital.
Okay.
But marketing's a very, people don't know we're here
Right.
and can offer that
right,
opportunity.
right. You can actually market to the people who are already coming here, like
That's
the
right.
second homeowners.
Absolutely.
Colin?
Along that lines, you have an entire generation coming up that spent their whole younger lives vacationing here. And just marketing too, saying you vacationed here your whole lives, why not live here? I mean, everyone that's graduating from Boston, of my friends, moved to LA, Colorado,
Right.
big vacation areas, because those are the areas that they think, well, I don't want a second home there, I want to live there.
Right,
So.
right, okay. That's interesting. Market to the students who actually came here for college and or grew
Or
up
even
here.
came here as young children.
Right, or vacation here.
Yeah.
We're to find out all those young people that go through year after year through Mount Snow. And that would be an interesting group to market to. Okay. Any other points? Yes, ma'am.
The really low level of trying to help entrepreneurs, okay, I think. Our community is very small. It's located between two communities that have had natural disasters or fires that have really affected their economy. But in the Windham County region, just keeping a local store has been a big problem. And we've gotten committee, we've had 4 or 5 months of committees of the community coming together, and they get to a certain point when they know where they can get the extra resource to help, the capital, to help them get that step to turn it into a co-op or
Right.
something where, the community managed to raise several $1 million to conserve Hogback
Right.
area as a natural area, recreational area, as a and to keep it from overdeveloping because
Right.
it's such an important natural resource kind of thing. But even when you have a whole community that's interested in working together and finding solutions to things, there's just that little area that, all these nice home stores, community stores, everyone, Putney and Guilford and and Marlboro, they really, when they lose that one little business in this
Right.
tiny town,
Right.
it's a big problem. And that's why also just that area to the next step of some kind of regional communication so that it makes it possible to keep those small businesses
Right.
vital.
Okay, good suggestion.
That's just to really sharpen what she's saying. There's kind of a trend with the general stores in the smaller towns that have been, there just hasn't been enough business to sustain it. And so they've been shutting down. And so her town is trying to come together to reopen theirs in some sort of a co-op way because they got nothing else really.
Well, there's actually a movement across the country, and there's actually a network of general stores. And there's some lessons that can be learned about how general stores can be very successful in this. They aren't the same as they used to be, but they provide the same community function, but they just do it with different assets and different services. So I think that's something that, the other thing I would suggest here is that more than incubation, and that you need almost an accelerator, what's called an accelerator environment here, as opposed to an incubation environment. It would be, accelerators are the newest form of incubation, and they move much faster. And there are actually some great examples of accelerators here in New England that have been pretty successful, that could be modeled off of for this area. And basically it's taking new business ideas and germinating them in 90 days. And really, sorting them out and figuring out which ones are going to work, which ones aren't going to work, and then really focusing on the ones that can look like they're going to work, as opposed to spending millions of dollars on an incubator trying to incubate 10 businesses. You can really work through 10, 15, or 20 businesses in 90 days through an accelerator network that is much more efficient, much more effective. But the business support area that you're talking about requires an ongoing business support structure. And that's a more complicated one because of where the capital comes from for that. But one of the ways that can be done is an associated business development system with a capital network structure, where actually some of the management fees that are generated off the capital structure can be put towards the cost of affording that small business development resource. Okay, we have 2 minutes. So what I want to do right now is talk about projects. Thank you. This is actually a little bit easier to read now. First of all, the process we're going to go through now is this round of meetings this week is to reach out to different parts of the region and provide information about what the profile is telling us, get input back from you all about challenges, opportunities, ideas you think are important. And then we're also having a series of, I think it's 8 different interview sessions or something like that, 6 or 8 this week. We had 2 yesterday.
Yeah, there's 6 more.
We have 6 more we're going through in different industry sectors. So today we have professional, IT, creative economy, and scientific interviews. We have forest and land.
Yep, working lands.
Working lands. Yesterday we had tourism and hospitality along with manufacturing. And then we have a series of others in different industries this week. Okay, all that input's going to come back over the next couple months. We're going to sort through the input and come back the last week of June, the week of June 24th, which is the end of that week is my wife and my 45th wedding anniversary, which we will be spending in Vermont, thank goodness. And and what we'll be doing is reporting back to you. We'll actually have meetings in the same areas again, right, Laura?
Yes.
The same areas. We'll report back what we learned, make sure we've been heard. You think we've heard you, and some ideas. But we'll also seek additional input at that point based on what we've learned. And then we will go into, and at June also, we will start seeking input for projects. Under the CEDS process, there is a list of projects that go into the CEDS plan for infrastructure assets like water systems, sewers, roads, all kinds of, it could be a hospital, it could be an emergency clinic, it could be any number of assets that need to be funded to be put in place. And especially an area that's been hit by natural disasters, you're going to have more of those. It could be a school that needs something. And those assets go into this list, and we have a prioritization process that is intended to focus on linking those projects to the strategy. And there will actually be a team that will be doing the assessment. So each town will have the opportunity to submit those. They'll go through a sorting process based on the strategy have those projects linked to the strategy by being in that report that goes into the Economic Development Administration. Any grant opportunity that comes up that has a SeVEDS qualifier in it will put you at the top of the list for consideration if that project is sitting within that and is linked to a strategy. So that's one of the, so we'll be issuing a call for projects in June, that last week of June, and then we'll go through a sorting process in the summer. And we will then do a report out on this whole strategy in October, and then there will be, that we will do a round, I think we're going to do a big community meeting or something with that, and then
The SeVEDS annual meeting.
SeVEDS annual meeting, and we'll have, and then there'll be 30 days for comment, and then those comments will come in, and then in November that report then goes directly into the feds for following, and then SeVEDS has the plan it's supposed to be operating under. And unlike other areas of the country, the SeVEDS program is, the SeVEDS is actually supposed to be your economic strategy. In many areas of the country, it's just a grant getter and not used as a strategy. Here, we're going to use it actually as a strategy. Okay? So that's where we're at. My final question, any comments about today's session? Has this been productive use of your time? Any thumbs up? Okay. Okay. We encourage you to provide it if you want copies of this presentation. It's available through SeVEDS. It's going to be downloaded from the website, or
Yes.
it'll be posted on the website and can be downloaded from the website. And then if you have other comments or ideas that you're thinking about as a result of this meeting, send those comments in through the SeVEDS website. We'll incorporate them in. The whole idea here is to get people engaged. Earlier in the day, this morning you talked about ideas for getting other people engaged. When mud season's over, if there's a way for us to get other people, business people input, we'll certainly consider that, but get those ideas to us. Okay? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. A fellow mail order.